Hi there, Patrick from Crafted Fractal here, and today I'm going to show you how I made what's commonly known as the 3-minute owl, or 2-minute owl, or occasionally 5-minute owl. It took me a little more like 2 weeks last summer because it's actually the first wood project I worked on since I was a kid. He's got character for sure, there's no wax or polish on him, just raw wood cuts, but I like the feathery look of the unfinished wood. This is a design that I learned from Hayden's site, Whittling with Will. There are a lot of different variations out there, but his instructions are really clear and thorough. Will includes some step-by-step sketches that, for whatever reason, helped me more than watching someone make the cuts in a video. I opted for what he calls Type 1, which is just to say I left mine a bit taller, with implied claws as if sitting on a stump. The Type 2 is just a bit more squat, with the wings less emphasized. With this being the first project in a long while, I used the tool I knew best from everyday use over the last few years, a Victorinox du Le Mans Evolution Wood 10, known more commonly as a Swiss Army knife with a cool wood handle. It's got a bit of a curve to the grip, which I like, and the 10 in the Victorinox name refers to the 10 tools in this particular model. Tools include a large blade, a can opener, a corkscrew, an awl or reamer, which helps you punch holes in things, a nail file, a nail cleaner, a bottle opener, a big screwdriver, and a little tiny screwdriver, and a wire stripper, which there are some great YouTube videos about how to use this thing, and then 11, bonus tool, a keyring, which is sort of halfway between a tool and not. So this is the blade I used to make the cuts. It's not specialized for whittling like a detail knife, but it gets the job done. So I'm just going to walk through each of the steps in Will Hayden's design, pointing out how I approached them and where I went my own direction. First things first, I started by researching what's the easiest wood to cut for beginners. I went with basswood. It's sort of the closest thing to carving butter while still having some durability. I got some basic blocks from Joe Paul's Crafts, and for the owl I used one that was 4 inches tall, 1 inch wide, and 1 inch deep, which is a bit different from Will's design. He recommends a thinner stick, 6 inches tall, 1/2 inch wide, and 1/2 inch deep, where the owl would be smaller and sort of sit on top. But it's all just a matter of proportion and aesthetic. So the orientation for the front of the owl is to have the corner of the wood facing towards you. The first cuts you make are to scoop a curve into the top between the ears. Then, you're doing stop cuts to define the neck. For learning all the different cuts, I recommend checking out Grant Barnes's Beginner's Guide to Whittling video. He gives a great introduction to whittling with an emphasis on safety, which is absolutely crucial when carving. So for the ears, you're doing stop cuts again, at a slightly larger scale. Here's a close-up of how I shaped the ears to be a bit more conical and sanded them to be smooth. For the wings, again, Will's design has smaller dimensions, everything in units of 1/2 inch. With my owl being a bit taller, my units are more like 1 inch, but the proportions are pretty much the same. I have a shorter point on the back of the wings, and that's just a personal preference. Then again, these are basically stop cuts for the beak. I actually cut upward a bit to make the beak pop out from the head a little, but that's not in the original design, and you have to be careful not to take too much out, or you'll weaken the wood and the beak will just fall off. So then you're just removing a flat strip so that your owl's back isn't pointy. And you remove kind of that same flat strip on the front and sides of the body and the sides of the face. From here on out, you're really doing details. So take a bit more definition around the bottom, around the neck, undercut for the tail, and then you're doing some very simple chip carving cuts, where you're basically using the tip of your knife to make little triangles that cut out a shape. My owl's eyes ended up as diamonds, and Will does more of a triangle. Here Will is cutting the owl off the rest of his stick. You could leave it on if you want. Neil at Greencraft makes them into bookmarks with an owl on top, which is kind of cool. For my owl, I was using the whole piece of wood, so this step wasn't as relevant. Similarly, here he's squaring up the base to make sure it sits flat, but mine was already square from the milling process. And he puts an X on the bottom, which I think is better for stability. I wasn't sure, so I did it as well, and it did seem to help there be a bit less wobble. I also sanded into the center so that any minuscule curve outward on the bottom was instead a curve inward, making the square outer edges carry the weight. And that's really where Will's tutorial ends. From there, it's up to your imagination and time constraints if you want to add details. For my owl, I was excited about learning to chip carve for the eyes, and so I just continued that diamond pattern in order to make the texture of the wings. You can see I used a straight edge to lay out a diamond pattern in pencil. Then I just went one by one and cut out those diamonds. A bit laborious, but good practice, and I like how the effect turned out. From there, I did a lot of sanding, some definition and line work around the face, and I'm happy with my little owl friend, who has been a companion at my desk and at the piano for many months now. I hope this video was helpful or inspiring to you. Are you a wood carver? Have you carved an owl like this before? Let me know in the comments. If you liked the video, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, hit the bell icon, follow Crafted Fractal on Instagram, and I'll see you next time.